This episode of Goosebumps Crew is sponsored by Trophy Smack. Celebrate your wins and losses in style with your own customizable trophies, belts, and rings. Link in the description, but more on that later.
The most thrilling, spine-tingling series ever.
From the pages of R.L. Stein's best-selling books,
And the screams go on forever and ever.
Greetings, Goosebumps fans, young and old, big and small. Welcome back to the Goosebumps Crew Podcast. I'm your host, Isaiah Vargas, also known as the Goosebumps channel on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. And as always, I'm joined by the rest of my Goosebumps crew, Goosebumps Aussie fan Bjorn Panlick, Shawin, Nick Shaw, and the ultimate Goosebumps man, Michael Lilliquist. We're back to talk some more Goosebumps today, and we're very excited today because we have a very special guest. We have Ron Oliver, who is one of the directors and writers for the original Goosebumps 90s series, and we're very excited to talk with you today. Ron, welcome to the Goosebumps Crew.
Thank you very much. Great to be here. Thanks for talking to me. It's a pleasure to talk about the Goosebumps phenomenon.
Absolutely, and we're certainly going to talk about the Goosebumps phenomenon today, but first, if you are not subscribed and following the Goosebumps Crew Podcast, then what in the heck are you doing? Because if you're a Goosebumps fan, you are going to love the things that we talk about on this podcast. This is episode number 16, and that means there are 15 other episodes that you could watch right after this one, and we've had some amazing guests on the podcast, including Alan Doucette, Matt the Wild, Kai Eric Erickson, Scott Wickware, Marilyn Smith, Cal Dodd, the folks over at Trick or Treat Studios, Chris Sefro and Sam First, and so much more. You guys need to subscribe to the Goosebumps Crew Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts if you love Goosebumps, because I tell you, if you love Goosebumps, you're going to love the Goosebumps Crew Podcast. So make sure you give us a follow. All right, we are going to talk about some Goosebumps 90s show today, and we're going to talk about some of the episodes that Ron, that you directed. You were one of the main directors on the original TV show, and I feel before we get into the nitty-gritty of that, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm a people person. I like long walks on the beach, and you mean in terms of...
Yeah, in terms of your career.
Yeah. Well, I was born in Canada, north of Toronto. I started writing and directing stuff very early on. When I was 25, I wrote a spec script that became a movie called Hello, Mary Lou, Prom Night 2. That got made and made some bank for them, and I got to keep doing it. Made a few more movies. Moved to California, and not long. Actually, it wasn't long after I moved to California, which would have been 1989-ish. Not long after that, I ended up going back up to Montreal to do a show called Are You Afraid of the Dark? And while we were doing that show, I got brought in to do the first season of Goosebumps, which then became various seasons of Goosebumps. There's not much more about me that's very interesting, to be honest with you. I'm just a regular guy like anybody else. I have my valet put my trousers on one leg at a time like anybody else. So it's, I live in Palm Springs with 2 desert tortoises, a Chihuahua, a terrier, a bunch of ravens, and my husband, who's the most expensive Filipino in America.
I'm glad you brought up that you worked on Are You Afraid of the Dark, because in the 90s, Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark were some of the most well-known...
Look at you with the ghastly grinner, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
right.
I was ready for it.
And when we had Kai Eric Erickson on, for those who are new to the podcast, we had Kai Eric Erickson, who played Billy in the episode Welcome to Camp Nightmare, and we got to talk to him about that episode, as well as the episode The Tale of the Dead Man's Float, which is usually referred to be one of the most terrifying episodes of Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yeah.
But I'm glad you mentioned that you worked on that show, because that show is certainly a lot of people discuss whether or not Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark are better, and some people say that Are You Afraid of the Dark is scarier than Goosebumps. And I honestly, there are some episodes I can't say I disagree.
I think tonally, having worked on both of them a lot, tonally they were quite different in the terms of Dark was literally dark and we could have very dark endings. Whereas on Goosebumps, they like to keep it that we would have a happier ending. And also because Goosebumps was a network, it was on Fox, whereas Dark was on Nickelodeon. So Nickelodeon was always a little bit edgier. So there was that. But then as Goosebumps progressed, it became darker. So by the end of that show's run, I remember a few of the episodes I was directing and writing, we got to do some pretty intense stuff, and some of the endings were very downbeat. So it evolved a little bit as it went along.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about some of those episodes that you got to work on. Now, the very first episode that you had directed was an episode that we've talked previously on the podcast, Welcome to Camp Nightmare. And we've said before that we personally think that Welcome to Camp Nightmare is one of the best episodes of the show. It's a really well done episode overall. It was the first, and this is a good time to discuss something that people commented on when we did that episode. I had said that it was the first two-parter, and a lot of people were quick to say, well, isn't The Haunted Mask technically a two-parter? No, it's an hour-long episode. It only got put in two parts in syndication. So Welcome to Camp Nightmare is technically the first two-part episode. It released in 2 half-hour episodes. Now with that little rant out of the way, let's talk a little bit about that episode.
Isaiah, they make a decaffeinated cola that's just as good as the regular stuff.
That is true.
Plus, no. It was a first two-parter. That was a lot of fun. I actually remember it really well, surprisingly, for something we did 30 years ago almost. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure Kai told you all the stories, but we shot that thing at an abandoned Boy Scout camp up east of Toronto, I think. And we were all staying at this Holiday Inn nearby there because they wanted us to stay in the camp, but I was like, I'm not staying in some creepy camp. So we all stayed at Holiday Inn, and we would go to the gym in the morning, go swimming in the morning, have a little breakfast, and go to set, and then shoot for the day until it got dark or whatever, and then we would leave. It was like being at camp ourselves. It was a lot of fun, and that was my first experience with that crew coming into it. And I had known a couple of the crew people from the other couple of movies I did in Toronto, but it was my first time with this whole bunch. And what a remarkable team they were. The creativity was just at a high level. Plus, at that particular moment in time in kids TV in the mid-90s, we had a budget. Like, they gave us money to spend, because so many of those shows ended up being nothing, which is why most of the stuff's animated now, because they can hire some poor kid in some country someplace to draw cartoons until his fingers bleed. But at that time, we had a real live budget, and it was great. And we shot for, I'm pretty sure it was a 10-day shoot, because we were doing 5 days per episode back then. So it was probably a 10, which is longer than they had for like the Twilight Zone, the original Twilight Zone. So we had about 10 days to shoot that whole thing. And it was just, everybody took great care with it. And Bob Stein was just a terrific collaborator, because he would give us the books and say, just take it and do it. And Billy and Dan, who were the producer / writers, essentially the showrunners of the thing, Dan Angel and Billy Brown, they were actually really great. They were very gracious with their script, because you get on the floor and you're making the movie, and you gotta tweak the script and change things as you go along and try to enhance it. And there were some scenes here and there in that original script that I was like, the logic wasn't really great, and I'm going, well, you got to have this and figure that out and stuff. And so they'd go back and fix it and make it work for us, which was terrific, because that's a gift for a writer to do that for you as a director.
Absolutely. Of course, like as I said, we talked a lot more in detail about the episode in our interview with Kai, but I do want to bring up once again that, me personally, I like this episode because compared to a lot of other Goosebumps, not only episodes but stories in general, a lot of them have to kind of have that element of the supernatural in it. And this episode, well, it does have like, you know, a monster, technically Saber. It's much more of like a psychological kind of story. It's sort of the main character at this camp, and instead of like, you know, haunted happenings, like haunted stuff happening, it's more just kind of like things happen and then people disappear, and it just seems like everyone's just kind of like nonchalant about it, or they just kind of outright say like, "What are you talking about? There's no one here with that name." And that's great especially for like kids horror, because I feel like kids sometimes are in a state where they feel like they're not listened to. They feel like, you know, like they say things and nobody like will believe them, or no one will listen to them. And I think that kind of framing for a story is great. And in this scenario, I mean, you have a really likable main character who's very, like, you know, he's very courteous, he's very courageous, and his friends start disappearing. He's like, I'm going to get to the bottom of this no matter what. And then it leads to that ending, which we talked about as one of the craziest endings in Goosebumps history. Not only is it a government training camp and everyone's okay, but they're aliens and they're going to Earth. Like, that's one of my favorite endings to a Goosebumps book and show.
It's a great double twist ending, and it's also what you said about the sense that the kid's not being listened to. That's a great horror element for any story, but for this one in particular, it really worked. And I remember, because usually when you're going to make a picture or an episode, you would sit, you know, with your crew and talk about aesthetics and what the theme of the thing is, and what if they want to watch something to get in the mood for the piece. And I told everybody to watch the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers, because to me that's one of the great paranoia stories. And the idea that, but I know what's going on and no one will believe me. And they, I think Kai probably watched it actually, but I know some people on the show, on the crew, did watch it to get into that mindset. Because you're right, that's exactly that's what the sweet spot for, absolutely, for kids horror. It's also, you referenced the Ghastly Grinner on Dark, and that's also the same kind of idea. That, you know, there's a moment in that show when the kid comes home and his parents have turned into the drooling zombies, and it's like, that's right out of a nightmare I had when I was a kid. Because you just, the sense that there's nowhere to turn, you got nowhere to run. So it's a good theme for kid horror.
Exactly. And I mean, this episode was great because it just got to that point where he's just, I mean, once his friends like supposedly drown, and Larry just leaves him behind, and he just runs back to his cabin, and he's just sitting there. He's just like, get it together, get it together, get it together. And then he's just like, something snaps in him, and he's just like, he's got the bat, and he's just like, I'm finding out what's going on now. And then it leads to the confrontation with Uncle Al, who is like a complete 180 of how he started in the episode. Now he's like literally a drill sergeant. And he's like, we need to find this camper. I'm going to give everybody arrow guns, or what was it, tranquilizer darts. I mean, even when they say like tranquilizers, it's still like they're giving these kids guns. And then it ends with Billy like holding this tranquilizer gun, like, you better tell me what's going on or I'm gonna shoot you. It's like,
well, in the book it was actually rifles, I think, but it's
it was like
obviously not going to translate well to a kids show if they're going to have rifles. So
listen, that's all pre-Columbine. So back in that moment, it didn't occur to anybody that this sort of thing would be an issue. And it's funny you would talk about that sequence, because I remember the editor that I had on that show, I think it was Peter Light, and but I came into the room to look at the first cut of it, and he had taken this material that we shot, that specific sequence where they get the air rifles and it becomes this whole thing, and Billy with the bat. And I shot a lot of material because I wanted it to be intercut, and I wanted a lot of like pieces and for it to be so it became staccato editing, so you get more and more anxious as you're watching it. And he nailed it, the editor, because I was already on another show and another episode, so I wasn't able to sit with him every day in the edit suite. So he was cutting it based almost entirely on the material he saw and the script. So I came in and he nailed it and got exactly what I wanted. So he understood that sense of increasing doom and the paranoia of it and the insanity of it. Like that was really. That's
a great point you brought up, because the episode is shot amazingly. I mean, there are so many like great angles. Like there's like the scene where Billy's running, and you have that sort of like worm's eye view, and then it just kind of like goes up as he runs by, and it becomes like upside down almost. You have the nice like zoom focus, like when he sees Saber, like just like that getting closer sort of feeling.
Thank you, Mr. Hitchcock. Thank you, Mr. Hitchcock, for giving us all the verdict.
Yep. No, that's like a classic Hitchcock right there. And the intercutting, especially during like the really, really, really tense scenes, like, and coupled with the music by Jack Lance, it's just like bam, bam, bam.
Oh,
it's like
the score is fantastic in it.
It's a really good score.
Like this was honestly my favorite episode. It always has been. You know, like as a kid, like I remember this was one of the first ones I saw on television, because this one was only released on VHS like in the UK and a few places around Australia. So I remember catching this episode on television, and it was just, I don't know what it was. There was something about it, like you were saying, Isaiah, like it's just got a very different approach, like, you know, the psychological as opposed to just the supernatural. And I think that's what makes this episode stand out, is that it is very different to the rest of the series. And you have, I would say Billy is one of the greatest like protagonist characters in the Goosebumps universe, like, you know, and then of course we have to point out that I would say Larry is probably the greatest douche bag in the Goosebumps television show universe.
He was great. I mean, like that, it's so funny because every character in this episode is just like really like greatly written, whether they're like a nice person or just a complete asshole. Like Larry especially is just so funny with how like he doesn't care.
Let me speak about that, because it's funny, when we were casting those things, I remember that character, that actor specifically coming in, and I was like, well, that's the guy. And I got so much pushback from everybody going, well, no, he's too over the top, and he's too this, and he's too, I said, but this is the thing, this show, because it was the first one we're doing, this show has to be from a kid's point of view, and you tend to see these things a little bit exaggerated when you're 12 years old, 11 years old. So these characters can do that. And I remember that specific character going, there's a shot of him in there when he's in the camp. God, I can't believe I remember this. There's a shot of him in the rec hall at the camp, and he's got the moose antlers. So he's standing, so he's framed by those two moose antlers. And I remember setting that shot up, and probably one of the execs was going, do you think? I said, no, I'm the director.
It's perfect.
No speaking. No speaking.
I love it.
So yeah, well, Bjorn, where are you from? From Australia?
From Australia. So I live in the Gold Coast, which is like everyone always says, the sandy Gold Coast. It's where you want to go. Margot Robbie's from here.
Oh, okay, because I only asked because my BFF, she's from Melbourne. So.
Oh, Melbourne. Yeah, no, I've got a lot of friends that live down in Melbourne, actually. A lot of them are actually like big collectors like me. So
okay.
Yeah, they're all
great.
They're always looking for Goosebumps stuff for me.
Well, it's funny. That's the point. That is funny because her nephew, Gully, is obsessed with Goosebumps. And I'm going to go up, after I get back from Europe, I'm going to run up to New York and see Bob and Jane. We always get together for a drink at Christmas. So I'm going to get him some signed Goosebumps book or something that he's like obsessed with it. He just loves it. So I'm going to make her into the best aunt ever by getting this for
That's awesome. To have someone who can get you like personalized signed stuff, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah, because let me tell you, not everybody is so lucky. Like Isaiah and I met actually in Wisconsin to go meet Stein. Mm-hmm. I'm from Indiana, so like it was about a 7-hour drive one way for myself.
Right up there of me and R.L. Stein, right there.
When we got there, I got there maybe like 2.5 hours before he was even going to do any signings, and they were already turning people away.
Yeah, there was a lot of people there.
And they said that you have to go to the next one, which was like 5 hours later, that he's going to do at a high school just down the road. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. I show up for that. I just went ahead and left where I was, went straight there, and I just stayed there the whole time. There was already people waiting.
Yeah.
And they had to turn people away from that too.
Yeah,
I mean,
that was people there. It was
insane.
They filled up like a whole library, and then they filled up a whole high school auditorium with people who were just there to meet R.L. Stein. It was crazy.
And, his well, it's funny. His son is a big-time music supervisor on Broadway. He did the music for Beetlejuice and for Moulin Rouge. So he's like a big deal up there, which is great. Wow. So we go up to New York and we go see a show, and then have a drink with Bob and Jane, and just hang out and get to see them again. But it's great because I can usually get a deal on my tickets to go see a show. It's great.
Right.
Buy me a favor. Yeah.
Oh, one thing I
great to
gotta
know somebody.
Has Matt read a Goosebump book yet? Because we haven't had an update on that for a while.
Yeah, I don't know, man. When I met him, he was like, I don't know, like 15, maybe. I think.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
The
there's
joke
a
is
story that Bob told in his autobiography that his what was it? His son never read a Goosebumps book, and it was like, how? I think he just said he wasn't interested.
What was that story about the cobbler's son has the worst shoes in town or something? So, you never want to get into your dad. What's your dad do? He does this? Ugh, please.
Right.
What a loser.
Yeah. But
I think we've heard that actually a couple times because when we had Scott and Marilyn on too, they talked about their son and how he's like afraid of everything. And
yeah, they brought him to the shooting when they were.
Then they brought him to the set
House.
Of Welcome to Dead House, thinking, "Oh, mom and dad are here; it'll be okay." And instead, it mortified him. That dude probably has to have therapy later. And then they end up giving him a Welcome to Dead House birthday party and stuff.
Yeah,
so
then he was like, "I want a birthday party about Welcome to Dead House." It's like, okay.
I think Matt.
And then they traumatize all his friends.
Yeah, Matt was almost going to come to. I did a movie called One Night in Doom House that we did for Universal that was based on one of the mostly ghostly books. And I think Bob and Jane came out. No, Bob came out to that. I think Matt was going to, and then he at the last minute ended up doing something else. But he almost came to set. Almost. We get that close.
We'll get him one day.
Well, see, and that's the funny part because then even Tim Jacobus, super famous artist who's done Goosebumps from the beginning and everything. I think it wasn't until the Goosebumps movie he said that his son finally realized how cool his dad was because of the art that was on the credits was all his art.
Only took
in the end.
It's amazing the reach that this show has had too. Because when I was in Greece last year, I was doing a movie on the island of Rhodes, and beautiful place, and we go scouting the locations to find the place to shoot the picture, and these people came out this restaurant I went to, and then the guy said, what's your name? And I said, who I was and here to direct this movie. And about 10 minutes later, they came out of the kitchen, and it was like night and day, because on one hand, they're going, oh, who's this guy? And I guess they went back and IMDb'd me. And they come running out going, you did Goosebumps? And now suddenly I'm the Messiah, because, it's like I did that show. And
suddenly you got very interesting.
Very interesting, and it was great. But it's amazing how, I have people on film crews now, and executives and producers even now who grew up on these shows. And when they find out that you were the guy who made them scared of clowns or whatever, pick your poison. It's great because they're like, oh my God, this is why I got in the business, was because these things had a reach. And I remember when we were shooting Goosebumps, I remember saying to the crew early on, probably on the camp show, I have a feeling that, because we would do a big meeting in the beginning of the show, and I had everybody around, and we would talk about the meaning of what we're doing, and I always said, look, think about the shows you watched when you were a kid. Because when I was a kid, I watched Man from U.N.C.L. and Mission Impossible. That's how old I am. So think about those shows you watched when you're that age. And I said to these guys, this is what we're doing right now. So these shows we're making, this is going to have an impact culturally in 25 years. So remember, we must do this with respect. We must do this well, and as well as we can possibly do it, because it's going to have an impact, and people carry this stuff with them, and this stuff means something. And it's even the Christmas movies I've been doing. I did a bunch of Hallmark Christmas movies, and even those movies, which are inconsequential, really, at the end of the day, but people love them and they have meaning. That people come to me and say, this meant something to me in my life. So it's astounding how the popular culture of it all, to us, it's great fun, but it actually has meaning for people in their lives.
Absolutely. I mean, we talk about all the time,
100%.
Just how much Goosebumps has just persisted over the years. The books are 30, they're going to be 32 years old this year since the book started, and the TV show will be 30 next year. And I mean, it's just crazy. And this is the kind of stuff that was a phenomenon back then and continues to be, because the people who grew up with it show it to their kids, and then they'll show it to their kids. And then, of course,
it's amazing. You're right, because it's 30 years ago we did it, and I'm still 39. Like, that's what's interesting.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting.
By the way, did I show you my guillotine?
Oh, that's cool.
Ooh.
Oh,
Because I'm a magician. That's how I started in the business. So that's
I like that.
beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Cool.
that's where the writers go.
I was
Yeah,
about to say, have you
that's so
tested
cool.
it on
I mean,
anyone?
we've spoken like all together, like many times, like there's got to be some kind of like a convention or like a panel for like Goosebumps where we get like all the, like a lot of the stars from the original show, like some of the cast, like crew members, to have some kind of like a panel. Like Alan was talking about, like, he would love to do a Goosebumps like documentary, about the original 90s show, especially now that it's coming close to 30 years. And I think there is a want for it, definitely. Like Cal even said when he was on, like some of his people that he works with have said he would make a killing at like horror conventions if he took a Slappy doll with him and just started doing the voice, like, so I think it would just be such a cool.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
we did one in San Diego a couple of years ago. They had a panel for Are You Afraid of the Dark? And DJ and I went, and did we have one of the actors with us maybe? Oh, I kind of forget. But we did a panel, and we thought there would be maybe 100 people show up and we would chit chat. And there was like 1,000 people showed up to this thing. It crammed the auditorium, and it was shocking. Like walking out, there's this wave of like, to be fair, it was a wave of love, let's be honest, because they just love it. But it was really, and they would hoop and holler at every comment you make about whichever episode. So, but yeah, Goosebumps has had a great run. It's made a great life for itself.
Absolutely. Let's talk about another episode that you had directed. So you directed 2 episodes involving Slappy, and the first one was the first Slappy episode, Night of the Living Dummy, or technically Night of the Living Dummy 2, because that is still very confusing. But that was the second episode that you directed, and the first one was Slappy. And that one is a very good one, because that was obviously the introduction of Slappy to the Goosebumps TV show. He's definitely, by hands down, the most popular Goosebumps character. And that episode had a lot of good comedic moments, and it certainly had a lot of atmosphere and a lot of sort of, I would say, terror, because you have a character like Slappy who not only has that aforementioned thing of this thing's alive, nobody believes me, so you feel isolated when the main character does. But not only that, but you have this character who, like, it's not like a monster where it's like, mindless, it kind of just does what it does. You have a very cold, calculating being who wants to make you miserable. He wants to ruin your life and make sure that you suffer, even if he doesn't attack you physically. He just wants to make you miserable in your life, and that's what he does.
Make you look like you're insane, like you're crazy, is what he wants to do. He's psychological too.
Well, he has that whole thing, that whole monologue that Cal so graciously reenacted for us in his episode, of like, they're gonna lock you up, like, everyone thinks you're crazy, and I will see to that like they'll lock you up, and that's creepy. It's like, I have no reason to want to do this. I just want to do this because that's who I am.
Yeah.
And that's a great episode. I just love, that was another episode that had great camera shots. You had, because you have a dummy, sometimes you got to do like shots where you make it look like he's alive. And I remember there was one where it's just like the camera's kind of positioned from the ground looking up, and it's like an angle, and then you have Slappy like standing almost like he's towering like over the characters, and that's just what you do with camera work. You make it look like how it represents.
Yeah, well, that was the thing with him too, was that you wanted to make sure, like, how do you make this 3-foot tall doll threatening? Because he hasn't got any weapons, because it's still a kid's show, so he can't be walking around with a knife or something. Mm-hmm. I remember there's a shameless steal in that episode from John Carpenter. The moment in the original Halloween when Jamie Lee Curtis is sitting in the foreground, thinking that she's stabbed Michael Myers, and killed him or whatever. and his body's in the background, and she's standing there going, "Oh no!" Because why would you leave the house, right? You killed him. Get out of the house. She's standing there, and he just sits up. Bonk, like so. And we did that with Slappy, and that was actually one of the hardest things to do because I wanted to be able to see the doll in the background on the floor and have him sit up. And if you can't, how do you do that with the mechanics of it, with hiding the operator and so on and so forth? So
Well, that was great because it's right after she knocks him down, and then her sister comes in, and that's when her sister finally sees he's alive, and then he sits up and he just like his head just does a complete 180, and it's just like, oh shit. And it gets creepy. I mean, now the cat's out of the bag, he's alive, what do we do? And for a while it's like he's hiding, so he's like, where did he go? They're just looking around for him. And then they just
that's deliberately because half the time these things don't work. So it's like the shark in Jaws, and you're going, okay, how do you make a movie with the protagonist, the antagonist, who, if it doesn't work? And so the mechanics of it were always, that thing was always falling apart. The wires would snap out of the inside. And now you've got this guy and he's operating beautifully, but back in 1990, when they're still working on servos and things, it was like, okay, how do we make this work? So half the time you'd get him into hiding and you would just do stuff with sound or with objects moving around and stuff to maybe up the ante of the scare a little bit. So.
Absolutely. And it's also
this was way before blue screen, green screen, or anything like that too. So it's not like really you could have, even if you did, I mean, the budget was shoestrings. I mean, you're really just having to rely on angles and just kind of lighting, especially because I noticed in some aspects, I mean, obviously lighting plays a big part in any film, like Halloween, obviously you got the darker parts, Michael's there and then he comes out of the shadows a little bit. Slappy kind of had that little moment too, I think, in a few scenes from Night of the Living Dummy.
Oh, I'm sure I stole that too. Absolutely. Because, you're like, how do you make this thing? Because I remember when they said, do you want to do this one? I was like, well, the problem with something like Slappy is that it's been done to death. The ventriloquist dummy. There's a brilliant film, English picture. Damn, it's not the old one with the anthology. There's another one in the middle of it. I want to say it's not Dead of Night, but something like that. I have to look it up. But it's great, and it's your classic sort of ventriloquist dummy coming to life story, and so it's already been done. So you try to figure out how you do it in a way that is going to be okay for a kids network, and B, it's going to be something fresh and unique. So
there was also one from the Twilight Zone. I think it was just called The Dummy or something like that. And it was a ventriloquist with his dummy Willie, and it was more kind of like a split personality sort of thing. But even before that,
there's a movie called Devil Doll. That's what it is, and it's this English guy on a stage. He's got a vaudeville ventriloquist routine, and it's creepy. That's a creepy black and white, spooky as hell. So.
Yeah, and then even you can't do this on a kids network, but even stuff with Chucky was done even before Slappy. So yeah, you do run in that problem of well, how does we make Slappy stand out? And I think the thing with Slappy is that again, he's not really one to physically attack you. That's more of Chucky's game. Chucky, is a murderer. Slappy kind of just wants to get in your head and make everyone look at you like you're crazy. And he's also got that really insulting attitude. He'll just crack whatever comes to his mind. He just cracks jokes. And there's that one.
Well,
scene,
I mean, he said multiple times, he wants them to be his slave. He doesn't want to hurt them. He just wants them to be their slave. He wants them to be the slaves to him. So he wants. It's funny
because he wants to send Amy into therapy basically, because he wants her to look crazy. But the funny thing about that is in real life, Slappy did send a lot of kids to therapy. A girl at my work was sent to therapy because of Slappy from that episode. A brother used to literally put it on all the time because he had the VHS tape, because the Australian copy actually had Night of the Living Dummy 2 on it, on the actual tape. And he used to put it on all the time, and she would just scream and hide in her closet. And then he would like run up to the cupboard door, open the door, and he'd like just hold the VHS tape in front of her, and she would just scream. And she said she had to go to therapy because of Slappy from the TV show. So he kind of won in the end, really, when you think about it.
Yeah.
Well, and I just love the times where he does like just go off the rails and just insult everyone in the room, like in that episode when they're at the talent show, the family talent night, and she's just she's doing the bit, she's talking to him, and then he just takes over. There's no like, it's not even like super dramatic. He's just like starts talking in Cal's voice, and it's just like starts insulting like her dad and her mom, and in Bride of the Living Dummy, which I believe you were a writer for. It makes it the person that he gets in control of just makes it into an act. Like Slappy just does his thing in front of an audience and they love it, and all he's doing is just insulting them the whole time. My favorite one is
Call yourself an artist?
I think my favorite one was this is an audience. Jeez, for a minute there I thought we were working at the zoo. He's such a fun character. It's like he can be scary at the moment, but he can be absolutely hilarious.
They were hanging upside down in a fish market.
You can definitely tell a difference though when you get from Night of the Living Dummy 2, which you directed, and it had a very dark atmosphere to it, which was great. Like I thought that was one of my favorite episodes. It might be my favorite as far as the Slappy episodes, just because of how dark it was as far as lighting goes, his dialogue, everything else, how it was shot. But then you get to like Night of the Living Dummy 3. Better lit. It's a little more campy, a little more Joker slappy in a way. And even when you go to Bride, you kind of get that Slappy back a little more, the dark Slappy back a little bit, because you get that view of him kind of, like it was in Night of the Living Dummy 2 when he went to Amy's sister's room to mess up the painting. It's all POV, and he's telling the dog to get out of the way and messing up paintings and stuff. So, I mean, it was really kind of brought that back in Bride, but you could definitely tell like the tone for 2 was just so much darker.
I think it's just because of who
I wish that carried over more.
They leaned more into the sort of showing him a lot more as they went on because he was so popular. Because in Bride, there's not really much of that mystique. It's made very clear that he is alive, and he's more doing stuff like outright just saying, hey, I'm alive, I'm going to torture you, blah. Because that's kind of what it devolves into. Even, I mean, in the beginning of Bride, he's brought to life immediately, and he's just like, hey, you brought me to life, now you're going to do what I say. So it's...
Which one did I write?
Bride of the Living Dummy. That was the last one. That was the one with the doll, like the Mary Ellen doll, and then he gets sent to these people.
Don ripped that off of me because Don Mancini is the guy who did Chucky and has the franchise. And I remember talking about doing Bride of the Living Dummy, and then he did Bride of Chucky not long after, a couple years after that. I remember I've known Don forever, and I remember him going, "Yeah, that's a great idea." They went even weirder and darker than we did. But I barely remember writing that. I think I wrote that when I was I think it was probably on my way to France or something, because I was doing, after the Goosebumps stuff, I did a bunch of shows. I went over to Europe and I did a movie in Berlin and a project in London for a while and a whole bunch of stuff. So I probably was writing that on an airplane on the way from one place to another. Because I was trying to think, why didn't I direct that? Maybe it's because I was tired of doing dummy movies, but there you go.
Yeah.
So.
And also, I have a question as well for in Dummy, I'm not sure if you remember this, but Night of the Living Dummy 2, like those POV shots of Slappy, were those inspired by the original Child's Play at all? Since there's all those scenes in the original of Chucky running around in POV and stuff.
They might have been, but I mean, the truth is that if you're going to have that running around camera, you're going to do it from the doll's point of view. So it's all going to be. It's probably, to be honest with you, it's likely was more inspired by a TV movie from the 70s called "Don't Be Afraid of the Dark" with Kim Darby and these little creatures, these little prune-head creatures living in the cellar and in the fireplace. And I remember those shots being terrifying, because we put the camera on the floor and run around. I mean, and at the end of the day, we still have to bow to Sam Raimi, because, Sam puts the camera on a 2x4 when he's 20 years old and runs through the forest. And you go, well, okay, so all bets are off now. I mean, I did a mystery movie a couple years ago, and the camera operator was using a Steadicam. And to balance the Steadicam, you spin it upside down to get it to balance and bring it back around again. And he did that once, and I was watching the monitor. I went, "Oh, that's a really cool shot. Why don't we do that? Let's do that and have it go up to the girl and do it." And so we're doing this thing, and the cinematographer is out in the other room watching on the big monitors out there. And we do the shot. He doesn't know we're doing it. We do this shot in rehearsal, and he comes running and he goes, "Wait a minute. We can do that?" It's like, yeah, you can do anything with a camera. It'll be fun. And so we did. You know? So it's amazing what that world, as soon as the camera came off the sticks, it's amazing what you could do with it. And it all goes back to Carpenter and the Steadicam and how that all worked. Halloween, a lot of that's that. So
yeah, I mean that movie was certainly like definitely like a lot of stuff has come from Halloween and John Carpenter's style.
I saw Halloween and The Stuntman on a double bill, the Peter O'Toole film, The Stuntman, on a double bill when I was like, 17? And that was the moment for me that I went, well, now this is what I'm going to do with my life. I want to make movies, and I wanted to feel like Carpenter's stuff in Halloween, but I want to be Peter O'Toole in The Stuntman, you know? And if you've ever seen The Stuntman, get thee to the video streaming and watch the movie The Stuntman, because it's arguably the greatest film ever made about making movies. So
absolutely. Now, we're going to move on to another episode, technically 2 episodes that you had directed, Say Cheese and Die, and Say Cheese and Die Again. Now, this is an episode that is mostly well known for its leading star, Ryan Gosling, which is, it's still crazy to think that his first role was in Goosebumps. I wonder if he ever, honestly wonder if anyone ever comes up to him and says, "You remember when you were in Goosebumps?"
I'll take you back further. I found him in Montreal. He came in for us to read for one of the Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes for radio station 1.1. And he came in to read for us for this. And I thought, this kid's amazing. Let's put him in it. And then when I went to do Goosebumps, I just called and said, he was staying with me in Toronto because he went off to get agents and stuff. And I said, "Why don't you come and do this show?" So he came over and did that. We did a couple of things in Toronto when I was there. There's a couple summers we were staying there. And there's some Disney show or something he was on. So he did a bunch of guest spots on shows there just because we were in Toronto I was doing like episodes of Goosebumps and I think Animorphs at the same time. So we were staying there for a period of time because he'd stay with me for quite a while. And then we ended up doing that. So yeah, it's crazy. He still talks about it. Like he'll still refer to his Goosebumps days or whatever. And
that's good. I'm glad he still remembers that. I would honestly fear that considering the movie star he's become. I mean, he's like a super, super, super big movie star, undoubtedly. Between him and Hayden Christensen from Night of the Living Dummy 3, like some of the biggest people to come out of that show. But I feared that hopefully he would not have forgotten his roots.
No, he's a great guy, and he and Ava came out here a while back, and they had just had the first baby, and we had our tortoise sitting out here, and of course Ava picks the tortoise up and is petting the tortoise, and it's all lovely, and then the tortoise poops on Ava Mendes. So that was kind of a moment. I thought, well, but then Ava's like, "Yeah, that's fine." So it doesn't matter how big a star you become, a tortoise will still poop on you.
That is true.
Yeah.
Tortoises don't care about how big a star you are.
I would love to walk up to Ryan Gosling with like a Say Cheese and Die DVD or like just an image of him from the show just to see what he says. Because like he would always get images from like Barbie or like the movie Drive or The Notebook, like to science. But I just couldn't imagine what he would do.
He's very cognizant of his past. He carries it. He carries it very well. So it's fun to see. He's turned into one of the finest people I know, and a great husband and a great dad and everything. So he's one of the good ones. So
absolutely.
Good guy.
And I mean that's certainly arguably the most infamous thing about this episode, but this is one of the classic Goosebumps stories overall. The first Say Cheese and Die. Because the idea has been done before, a camera that takes pictures of the future. In fact, I believe that was also a Twilight Zone episode.
And it was also an episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark also.
And Are You Afraid of the Dark. So it's not...
so I directed.
It's been done before, a lot like Slappy. But
Easy transition from camera to camera.
from camera.
Yeah.
To camera. But I personally think it's a pretty good episode. And you have another one where it's not really much of like a monster story or a ghost story. You just have this really weird camera that just can predict the future, and the future is bad every time. And it's a very like subtle kind of episode, because it's, how do I describe this? It's an episode where, again, a character has something that he shouldn't have, and bad things happen, and it's not that nobody believes him, it's just what do I do about this? And by the time he takes all these pictures, I mean, at this point, like, people are taking pictures for him, and he's like, don't do that. Like, I think he takes a picture of his dad's car, and he takes a picture, it's a brand new car, and then the photo is the car is destroyed. And then for like most of the episode, he's just scared, and he's like, they're like, we're gonna go on a car ride, and he's just like, no. So
here's a little backstory on that. So the car scene where the car's driving and they're almost going to crash, you see the car go past and the family's in the car, and we're shooting that at nighttime in Toronto down by the lakeshore. And Goose and I were going to go on a one of our father and son trips to where were we going to? Punta Cana or something, some Club Med or something, like the next week. As soon as we wrapped the show, we were going out, because we used to go once a year. We go off on some trip. So we're going to go and do this. And to get a little bit extra money in his pocket for the trip, I put him in the backseat of the car. Now it's nighttime. I could have put a gorilla smoking a pipe back there. You wouldn't see. But I put him in the backseat of the car with the sister actor and the other two and everything to go past. So then it put him into slight overtime. So he got an extra like day's worth of pay or something for the episode, which is great, because then we have a little extra money for the bar at the, not that he was, you know what I mean.
Hey, that's a win-win. Sounds like a win-win for all.
It's a win. It was perfect. Yeah.
No, and then you get to a point where it's like, okay, this thing like predicts the future, and he takes a picture of his friend Sherry, and she just disappears. Like, she's not in the photo, and then the next day he's got like cops coming to his door being like, this girl's disappeared, what do you know about this?
And do you recognize the cop? Do you know who the cop is?
Who
An actor named Scott, a guy named Scott Speedman. And Scott Speedman went on to do Underworld, those werewolf vampire.
Really?
Yeah,
So
he was
that
in
was
the first two of those.
Yeah,
And I think they ended up placing him in the third, but he was in the first two.
That was another favor where Scotty, because we're in Toronto and we're hanging out with all these guys, because everybody's working. And so I just called him up and said, I think he was staying at the same hotel. I just called and said, hey, do you want to come out? And I knew him from, I did a series called Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys back in the mid-90s, and we shot them in France. And so we had just come home, and I said to him, why don't you come and do a Goosebumps and come hang out? So he came, and just for like one night. So he came down, we shot, then we went out for a drink or something afterwards. But that was Scott Speedman behind those mirrored glasses at nighttime.
Somebody asked that because just like, he's basically, so you got the detective there, and she's telling him that this girl's disappeared, and he's just like, she's gone, disappeared, like, and it just keeps zooming in on his glasses, and it's just like so funny.
It's very soap opera-esque.
Yeah,
I just think
that was taken. Yeah. That's another lift. That's another Hitchcock lift, because you remember the cop in Psycho leans into the car when Janet Leigh's parked asleep. And he leaves these guys mirrored glasses on, because people kept saying to me, why would he wear mirrored sunglasses at night, Ron? And I said, because it's a scary show.
Just be like, I would love to have a scene where he's just like, he walks back to the car and he like trips over the step or something. He's like,
I do remember
to
this
wear those at night.
only because of the Ellen DeGeneres show he was actually on.
That's
and this is how I actually remembered it. And yeah, she's like, I think she was showing like photos or stuff from stuff he's done in the past, and she's like, what's this? And he's like, oh, Goosebumps. Yeah. And then they actually showed the clip from the episode, and it even had Ryan Gosling in the clip, and then she like pointed out, oh, there's even a young Ryan Gosling in there. And it was like on Ellen DeGeneres, they showed a random clip from Goosebumps. I'm like, whoa, like, that's how I remember it.
This show has, it's just lasted. And a lot of it was to do with where we were time-wise, too, because in the mid to late 90s in Toronto, you had a lot of actors just starting out their careers. and they went on to do things. And it was an extraordinary time. There was not a very deep talent pool there back then, but there was a certain quality to it that the good people were really, really good. It's much better now. I made a movie there last summer before last, and I was shocked how good the talent pool is in Toronto these days, but it wasn't always that great. So those guys, the ones that were really fantastic, they were destined to go off and do bigger and better things.
Well, and it was always funny too, because I've heard people talk about it, like, did you ever notice that a lot of these like campy horror for kids shows that came out in the 90s were all happened to be Canadian? Like Goosebumps, Are You Afraid of the Dark? And then
because there was a big thing. They had a tax credit system or something up there for children's television. So if you did a kid TV show, the government would kick in like 30% of your budget, which was very helpful.
Wow.
So a lot of that stuff happened back then, and there was an episode we did called "The Perfect School." And it was originally just going to be a 1.5 hour episode. Yeah, there it is.
Yep.
1.5 hour episode. And we shot it, and we were having such a great time, and I was really feeling it. It was just so fun. I wrote the script, and it was just a blast. Great cast and loads and loads of fun. And we shot the thing, and when I cut it together, it was like 42 minutes long, or 40 minutes long, or 38 minutes long, something like that. Too long for a half hour. So I was going to have to cut like 10 minutes out, and I could not figure out how to do it. So I went to the producers and went to the network and I said, guys, I got a problem. I can cut it out, but it's going to be incoherent. And it's just such a great show. What if you gave me an extra 2 days of shooting, instead of like having to do it over 10 days, we could do it in 7 days. Give me 2 more days of shooting and I'll give you 2 episodes. How about that? Just give me 2 days, all I need. Mm-hmm. And so they hummed and hawed. And we were doing an episode called How to Kill a Monster. And I remember that being on set on that thing, and people came in. Our executive producer came in and said, okay, you got your 2 days. And the cheer that went around the room, because everybody felt that episode. It's so stylized and so, I think, well done that it was just exciting. And we all went back. The problem being, of course, is that the lead kid in it, Sean Roberts, it had been maybe 3 months since we did it. He had a growth spurt and his hair was longer. So it was this whole thing. So I had to figure that out. But once we got that figured out, then it was okay. But it's one of those, but point being that the budgets were always so tight that if you can offer them something more, they would give you more. So it was great that way.
That is awesome.
He went on to be a pretty big star, actually, John Roberts. He was in the Resident Evil movies.
Sean
played
Wexler?
Yeah, Wexler. He had like the glasses and he had like the hair slicked back. So, he was another actor that went on to do pretty well. The Perfect School actually is one of my favorite episodes.
I'm glad you brought that episode
I absolutely love The Perfect School.
Yeah,
I loved it. I loved every second of that episode.
It was a great one because it was one that was based off the tales, and that was especially cool because it was one that was based off one of the Tales to Give You Goosebumps stories, the books. So basically, you had the main Goosebumps books, and then you had Tales to Give You Goosebumps, which was basically one book had 10 short stories in it, and The Perfect School was one of them. And that is a great story, and this is a great episode because it is stylized. It's very atmospheric. Again, there's no monster, there's no supernatural anything, but not only are you in a school, but you're in a school that's like, we're going to make you perfect, and if you aren't, then we're going to just outright replace you, and you will be stuck here forever. So there's no way out.
Yeah,
and it's scary.
Now you're saying it takes me right back to it. I love doing that, and I love writing it, and because I'd write a script. I wrote a bunch of them, obviously, and I'd write a script and send it off to Bob and Jane to get their response because they had script approval, and they were always just really great about it, and they knew how it worked. So they were terrific, but they wrote me a note back saying, this is probably going to be the best adaptation of my books to date because this thing is just so great. And it was very complimentary and very flattering. But I remember doing it and having to do, because Sean, even at like 13, he was a pretty well-built kid. So he would get these T-shirts that he put him in a T-shirt, and there were these sloppy T-shirts. So we would have the T-shirts tailored for him to wear in the episode, which he loved because he's like, working on the gym and he's going to be that guy. But doing all those, and there's a painting in that episode, painting on the wall of the original Perfect Student. And it's this guy sitting there with a book and a candle and everything. And it's a big oil painting on the wall. And we do a big shock cut to it, And that painting is my best friend for the past 40 years, a guy named Michael Rowe, who's a horror author, and he lives in Toronto, and somebody painted that for him, and he had it in his house, and I said, I want to put that in the show because that's perfectly creepy, because you're one creepy guy. So we put it in the show, and it's still there. To this day, he's still, he has a clip on his computer someplace, and he'll run it on his Facebook profile once in a while.
And honestly, I'm glad that episode was 2-parters. We've talked in the past, it's like, because we personally thought, because we talked in a past episode about the episode Attack of the Mutant, and we talked about how that episode probably didn't need to be 2 parts. This episode, however, needed to be 2 parts. Like, it needed to have that story flow, and I'm so glad that it was, because because if you had to cut that down to like a half hour, I don't think it would work as well.
And the thing was, I had to go back into the story and pull it apart and put stuff into the story, into the script to go back to do reshoots. So we shot maybe another 15 minutes worth of material that we dropped into the show. So that was a real tricky little bit of puzzle work to try to figure out what scenes can I put in without it feeling like it was being padded, but keeping the suspense up. And then we just added, bits and pieces here and there. But it was that whole thing with him. Oh God. Okay, here you go. There's a thing he's crawling through the air conditioning duct, the air vents, because that's in every movie ever made. That's how you get out of a place. You crawl into the air vent, and there's a story to that. So they were building that. We were shooting that, and the set that they had built for me for the principal's office or some office wasn't done or wasn't painted, wasn't dry, because we're really on a tight schedule on that thing. And so they were building that set around us as we were shooting that thing in the air vent. And so we finished the scene, and they weren't finished the set yet. So we went over there, and normally when you're shooting a picture, you start out with the widest shot first usually, and then you work your way in with the camera, tighter lenses, tighter shots, and so forth for the continuity of it all. And we had to do it backwards there because they hadn't got the set built. They had the desk. So I said, we'll start with the close-ups, work our way out wide. So we started in tight, and we were literally filming it as they were putting the thing together. So we're pulling out wider as they're bringing the walls in and putting the desk in. I remember that now because that was my birthday. So that was insane. Wow. Yeah, that was an insane day. I remember that. God.
Yeah, no, that episode is so good. And I personally thought it had like some really creepy stuff in it, like 2 parts especially. Number 1 is where it would have like the to be continued, like in end of part 1 before you go into part 2. It's when they go into his room and like one person like closes his mouth, and then you just see the syringe, and it just like slowly fades out, and like that's creepy. Like just being asleep and all of a sudden like somebody.
That was reshot. That was a reshoot piece because we added that in.
Yeah, so, it's a great place to leave off part 1. It leaves
I remember that being that was a big conversation too, because obviously it's a kid show, and they're like, "Can you do that? Can you really do?" I said, "Well, we'll do it, and we'll see what happens." And we shot a version of it to see the syringe and the shadow on the wall, just in case. But and I was just looking at this. I got a Directors Guild of America award nomination for that episode, and also for Cry of the Cat. So,
Ooh, that's nice. Pretty cool. Wow.
Awesome. Another 2-parter that you got to do.
Yeah. And we'll certainly talk about that. One more scene I want to talk about with Perfect School is when, because obviously, so in the episode you find out that they're cloning people, and they already have a clone of Brian, the main character, that they're already working on, and it's just about completed. So, and then he breaks out later, and it's when he finds out that Wexler is also a clone, and he's running away. And he runs down the hall, and all of a sudden the clone's standing there. He's covered in like vat juice or whatever, and he's just like, "You're not going anywhere." And that's like haunting. It's like if you like ran into yourself in the hallway, in a dark hallway, I'd be pretty scared.
The ending freaked me out.
That was a creepy.
I thought the ending was just terrifying.
Oh yeah, and they get back home.
What happens to the kids? What happens to the kids that are locked up?
At first, you think, okay, so the clone took his place. It's like a very it's a bad ending, but then you find out that he glued his. You see that he glued his brother's butt to his chair, and you're like, okay, so he got out. He actually did trap the clone there, and now he's working the hack and get them out of there. And it's like, That's actually a pretty happy ending right there, I would say.
Those kids that are locked up, the real kids, like, what happened? Like, are they literally going to stay there forever? Like, what goes on here?
He's
Like,
working on getting them out. That's what the ending is implying, is that he's
I'm
hacking
curious to
into
know,
their
like,
systems.
I'm curious to know what their plans are with the kids who they clone, like, when they replace. Are they just going to keep them in there? Or are they going to kill them
in there.
eventually?
They
Like,
just keep them in there, I guess, until they die.
I know what happens to them. They all ended up being taken to a warehouse to build iPhones. Ended up.
They had a good 20 years to wait for that.
That episode was one of the ones I got some comments on because my entire career I've been adamant about casting quote diversity unquote, which is to say casting the way I see the world, because the world I live in is where people of varying ethnic and religious and all diversity. I have always lived in that world. And in that one, we have a pretty wide range of kids of varying ethnicities, which is really important to me. Incredibly hard to do, because in Toronto in the mid-90s, finding a talent pool, again, was very narrow. And to find kids of color, for example, was really, really a challenge. But I really wanted that to happen, so we did. And we got a lot of great comments about that down the road. That also, the same with the Cry of the Cat. With that, there's also, in that episode, there's also a kid in the bus reading a magazine called Giant Robot. There's lots of little treats in there. Giant Robot is one of my favorite magazines, and Eric Nakamura is the editor of the magazine, and Giant Robot is great, like pop cultural stuff. And I thought, what's a kid gonna read? What's a cool 13-year kid gonna read that they could take away from him when he's in the clone school, like he doesn't get to have anymore? I thought, well, that's pretty much the coolest thing ever. So we put that I remember calling Eric and saying, "Can I use your magazine? Yeah. Can I get a T-shirt? Yeah. Okay, just send me stuff." Okay, so
that's awesome. Well, we're gonna
keep adding on to it, seeing what you can get away with. Can I also get a cup holder? Can I also get
exactly
a subscription for the whole year? Is
that on the table? Is that on the cards?
Let's see what you can get in there.
That's awesome. Well, we're going to continue talking more Goosebumps episodes in just a second. But first, again, if you are not following the Goosebumps Crew Podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, please make sure you do, because we got a lot of great episodes talking with a lot of great, amazing guests, and of course, talking about Goosebumps all the way through. So make sure you follow the podcast, and also be sure to check us out on our network website, artemedia.org. We do belong to Arte Podcast Media, and not only are we there, but we also are around a lot of like-minded people who also host their own podcasts. They talk about things from pop culture, Broadway. One podcast is about wrestling, so if you're a big wrestling fan, you definitely want to watch that one. And there's just a lot of great people who work on those. So if you can ever check out artemedia.org and check out all those like-minded people, they really do deserve it, and I highly recommend them. And we're going to talk more Goosebumps in just a second, but first, let's have a word from our sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Trophy Smack. Everybody wants to feel like a winner, and what better way to feel like one than with a trophy of your accomplishment? As seen on ABC's Shark Tank, Trophy Smack is the ultimate destination for custom fantasy sports awards. Trophy Smack has what you need to celebrate your wins and losses with their large array of customizable championship trophies, belts, rings, and plaques. Their custom-made awards make for the perfect addition to almost any occasion, anything from fantasy football, corporate awards, gaming, wrestling, esports, and real sports. But even if you're not into sports, Trophy Smack products are customizable for anything, even for those who want a nice shiny trophy for being the best Goosebumps fan ever. Trophy Smack uses top-of-the-line materials to make superior-made awards that will last for years and years, and made to suit any price point. And if that weren't enough, not only does Trophy Smack have quality-made products for affordable prices, but they also include free shipping, free engraving, and 100% guaranteed satisfaction. If you want to snag yourself some quality-made awards for your fantasy sports event, visit Trophy Smack's website by clicking the link in the description and check out their large array of trophies, belts, rings, and more, and feel like a champ in no time. And of course, special thanks to Trophy Smack for sponsoring this episode. And now, back to more Goosebumps. So another episode, so you had said that you worked on some other two-parters, one of them being Cry of the Cat, which was one of the last episodes. In fact, actually you worked on two of the last episodes of Season 4. Cry of the Cat and How I Got My Shrunken Head, you directed for. And then you also did Werewolf Skin for season 3, which is another really, really well done episode. Actually, honestly, I would say both werewolf episodes of the show are really, really well done. I actually want to ask a little bit about some of the ones you did for season 2, like Vampire Breath, because I personally like that episode, because that one definitely has a great atmosphere. It has a great set, especially like the vampire layer. What was it getting like to work on that episode? Because that had a ginormous cave set.
I remember that set really well, but it's funny, I barely remember directing that one. And I can't even say I was like, it's like you're in some drug-addled state, because I wasn't even that. I just don't remember much about it. I remember the set. I remember the coffin sliding down the slide, because they built that thing for real. It was great. And the actors were terrific in that one, but I don't honestly remember much about it. The staircase coming down into the basement, stuff like that. But the actual show, like if you asked me what the plot was, I couldn't tell you. I literally, for some reason, I must have blanked it out. And I remember that during season 2, I was going back and forth between Are You Afraid of the Dark in Montreal, Goosebumps, and I think I was doing Animorphs probably at the same time, and I may even have been doing this show they did called Psy Factor, which was like this X-Files knockoff they did for CBS, all in the same building. So I would, like, in this one building in Toronto, I'd go on one floor, I had the Goosebumps bunch, the Animorphs bunch, and then I had Psy Factor. So I just moved my office from one floor to another in order to keep up with it all. I was doing a lot. So I don't know that I can't tell you too much about it. I don't remember much about it. I remember the actors. The guy playing the vampire was a really important Toronto stage actor. And I don't remember his name, but he was... he's that important. I don't remember his name. Such a jerk I am. But he was great. I remember him being really good in the show.
That was another Goosebumps ending that is just kind of takes a giant left turn, because, I mean, in the whole episode, it's these two kids running from a vampire, and then their parents come home, and then the vampire comes through. So you think it's going to be this whole moment as the parents see, like, it's a vampire.
It's like Grandpa?
Yeah, Grandpa? Like, what? We're vampires too? What?
No.
Like, that's just a great ending. And then it ends with them going to
Kids
sleep
get
in their
their coffins.
Yeah. Boy, the logic of that doesn't bear particularly close examination, but okay.
Yeah, it's like, did they ever go out in sunlight?
Yeah.
Like, what's the logistics of it? There's this whole cave under their house? What?
Well, you asked about...
maybe the vampirism don't kick in until they're teenagers, so they can go out until they're teenagers.
Vampire puberty. You asked about the last season of the series, too. I actually was the showrunner on that last season of the show, because the two guys who'd been on it before had left to go off to greener pastures. So I was suddenly doing all these things. So I wrote every episode of that final season. Whether or not I ended up sharing credit, I don't even remember that. But I wrote all those shows, and then they wanted me to direct them all, and I was like, I'll die. I mean, you can't, because you'd be exhausted. I remember doing all that stuff. So I kept a little closer eye on the scripts, I think, by then than maybe earlier on they had, just because it was one person overseeing all of it. So it's for better or for worse, obviously. So
yeah, and those episodes, I mean, season 4 was essentially 4 episodes, but it was 4 two-parters, so it was technically 8 episodes. Yeah. And yeah, 2 of them you directed, which were How I Got My Shrunken Head and Cry the Cat. Cry the Cat specifically, I think, is a very interesting episode, because it is based off the first Series 2000 book, and that was what they were kind of doing in the Twilight years, because they did Cry the Cat, and Bride of the Living Dummy was based off the new series at the time, which was Series 2000. And Cry the Cat was a double-parter that was sort of meta, because it was about a movie set. It was these actors making a movie, and then you had the actual scary stuff happening alongside that. And that had some great prosthetics, too, because you had the actual cat, which looked nothing like a cat, and that's a good thing, because it was so mauled and gross looking that it just looked like a little, like, gremlin creature.
Yeah.
And then you had the mom, because there's a whole thing where if the cat scratches you, you become more of a cat. And the mom just has this, half of her face is just this cat grotesque feature.
So just to interject, Earl Pasco.
Oh, thank you for the family.
Counting that ring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy, how come we didn't see that coming?
That's good.
Yeah, it's the family name. Hello. It's funny that the Cry of the Cat was, because it's not the book. If you read the book's basically a Pet Sematary knockoff. And I remember going, I can't do that because it's, they did it. Yeah. So what are we going to do? And I at that moment I thought, what if we did it like this? And I remember I wrote the script in like a weekend. And I said, I'm just going to do it like it's tongue in cheek. It's us making the show because we knew it was going to be the last one. So let's just do that. And I sent the script to Bob and Jane. And I remember Bob, they sent me a note back saying, okay, you're either completely insane, but this is the greatest script of the series because you love this thing. And I love doing it because it was in jokes akimbo all over the place. And there's a sequence in there after the opening scene with the exorcist thing when the guy goes up the house, and that's obviously an exorcist shot. And they go in, all the things happen, and the catnip and all this stuff. It's very camp and so much fun to shoot. And then right after that, when we reveal it's a movie within a movie, it all takes place in one shot as we come out, and then we do this big one shot where the actors come out, and we come through, we reveal it's a set, all this stuff. That was about 3.5 pages of script in that one shot. And, a script, it could take however long it takes to shoot it, but they had budgeted pretty much the whole day for that sequence. So I knew I was doing it in one shot. So we set up for the thing. We do 2 or 3 rehearsals. We do it. We're done. We wrapped at lunch. And everybody goes, wait, what? I said, oh, yeah, we're done. We did a happy birthday to one of our executives on the camera. And then I took the whole crew out for lunch. We went to some bar and we hung out because it was a Friday. And it was fantastic. And to this day, I have people tell me, oh, that was the greatest day ever. Because
yeah, I consider that episode to be the Wes Craven's new nightmare of Goosebumps. Because it's a movie they're making about an undead cat, and then there just so happens to be an actual undead cat that
what
the main character has to deal with. I know,
and there's also and it's just so fun in that episode too, because there's so many different Easter eggs and nods to other Goosebumps episodes in the background. Like when she's walking through the studio, the "Welcome to Horrorland" sign in the background, and the 2 thumbs up banner that was on the Attack of the Mutant Plus, and
I do remember that.
Goosebumps was again because we knew this was going to be the last episode, and so you're going. I want to say goodbye to everybody, tell them I love them, and do it like that. And that's really what that episode was about. Was thanking them for a great run. Thanking the crew, thanking everybody involved, and thanking the audience. So the audience who's watching that episode, they would get it and kind of enjoy it. And to this day, people still send emails and notes and stuff. I wanted to run back for a second because there's one episode you talked about. We did How I Got My Shrunken Head, which is the other one that I just loved writing because I wanted to do a 1940s, zombie movie with the African explorers and all that stuff. And there's a sequence in there that we do also, a flashback sequence that we did in one shot as well. And it was another one of those situations where we just did it and boom, it all happens all in one. But that was a lot of fun. That they built a set for us at a park in downtown Toronto. That whole jungle thing was a set, and they built it for real, the gigantic set. You could move in. It was fantastic. And we were there for, I think, 10 days or whatever it was, maybe 12 days, actually. We were there for a long time. And I got T-shirts for the entire crew because we were shooting at night there quite a bit. And I got T-shirts for the crew for that episode. And it had a little shrunken head on the shirt, and it said, How I Got My Shrunken Head, Goosebumps 1998. And on the back, it said, I spent the night in the jungle with Ron Oliver, and all I got was this little head. and so I give this to the crew, of course, and to this day, people have those T-shirts. So
that's awesome. That's really cool. And just to kind of wrap things up, we're going to talk about 2 more episodes, which are not as super iconic, but they're certainly worth mentioning. Number 1 is Let's Get Invisible. That was the episode with the mirror that
you go
on it makes you invisible, and then you find out later that it's another sort of evil version of yourself sort of thing, where there's a mirror version that pulls you in and then replaces you in the real world. And that's a great angle to take that kind of story, because if it's just going invisible, it's kind of it's invisible, but you got to have that sort of
been there, done that,
be careful how you use it, because any second you could be in this mirror dimension.
And you talked about actors of note. That one has Kevin Zegers is in it, who went on to a career as well. Kevin did a bunch of those Air Bud movies.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been a regular on a bunch of episodic stuff. He's been on FBI, whatever that series is down here. So he actually went on to something too. So.
And then How to Kill a Monster is an episode that I find pretty humorous.
I love that one.
You have the two kids with the monster in their grandmother's house, their grandparents' house. The grandparents are, like, even for Goosebumps standards, like super, super eccentric people. And then you have the brother who is just so sick of everyone's crap. He's just kind of like, the swamp's disgusting.
I love that kid.
He's
Robbie
so
White.
good.
He was so good. He was voguing on set, and his father said, "What does this mean, voguing? Should I hit him?" He was great. But I remember writing that episode because I wanted to do some really, again, tongue-in-cheek, kind of have some fun with the whole world of Goosebumps at that time. And that one, if you watch the first, let's say, 10 or 15 minutes of that, not knowing where it's going at all, and then watch M. Night's movie, The Visit, it's pretty much the same story.
Mm-hmm.
He went back to us because Night took The Shiny Red Bicycle from Are You Afraid of the Dark, and then he took How to Kill a Monster from us, from Goosebumps, and used those as starting points for two of his most famous films. And he admits it quite casually, but yeah, he did.
That's cool.
Well, I'm glad that he's very open about that. His blatant
He is.
theft.
That's the thing, because he's like, we're the inspiration. I was 12 when I saw this, or 15, or whatever. So he said that's the inspiration. I think fantastic. I love it. Great.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
I like that too. And
How to Kill a Monster is one of my favorite episodes. I love that episode. Like the swamp monster design is so cool.
it's
like,
a really
good,
cool
isn't it? Yeah,
design for a monster, and I just
especially
love
compared
how
to the book, because the book just is so different from the book description of it. Like,
well, it's just so funny too because pertaining to the title, they definitely try to kill the monster, and they kill it so many times that by the end they're just kind of like, is it dead now? And it explodes like in this like green slime, and they're just like, yeah, okay, I'm convinced.
Oh, I love that scene. I forgot that. Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah,
Funny.
it was because it's allergic to humans. Like, that's another great Goosebumps like twist. It's just like, oh, okay, like you literally could have just gotten 2 feet within this thing and killed it. That's great. One more question before we end off the evening. So Goosebumps, like we said, Goosebumps season 4 was very short. It was only 8 episodes, technically 4-hour-long episodes. Were there any plans to do any more episodes, or did it just kind of like end right there?
No, that was it, because the books had suddenly stopped selling. It's generational stuff, and so suddenly one day, literally overnight, stuff just stopped selling. And they're like, well, that's the end of that run. And we had a great time, so what do we care?
Yeah.
But that was it. They knew we weren't going to come back. So
Yeah.
I remember, like, season 3, maybe it was, finishing up thinking that was going to be it. And we were all packing our offices, and the producers came running down the hall and said, unpack, we start again tomorrow. So that's how it was back then. It was a lot of fun back then. Making those shows was a blast,
Oh, yeah.
and
I mean, it's a blast to
fun
watch
time
them.
to be making it. Yeah. So
Yeah, I still love watching them today, and we didn't get much time to talk about it, but Werewolf Skin is one of my favorites.
that's the one I almost got fired for. Oh, yeah.
Really?
It was too sexy when they take the skin off, and it's too sexy.
It is a little bit. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
whoa.
Yeah.
That's a great one, too.
I guess because he's photographing his aunt and uncle getting nude from Werewolf
go.
Skin, but
I mean, it had a great scene though too, because the barred windows, and then the werewolves are like trying to get in, and that's like scary because you just open your window and then all of a sudden, bah, wasteful werewolf. That was a good one. That was a great atmosphere.
I loved the actors in that one. She didn't have a big role, but that bus driver really made her time count on there. He's one of the more memorable characters
Very much
from all the
so.
episodes, even though she didn't have much time.
But yeah, I mean,
but everybody in that episode did a phenomenal job. I love the design of the werewolves, obviously, but the aunt and uncle, I can't remember his real name, the actor who played Alex, the lead protagonist for that episode.
Yeah, what was his name?
But no, we loved all these episodes that you got to work on.
Very, very great episode.
All great, and we're very happy to have talked to you with you about them tonight, and we're very happy that this series continues to live on through all generations that watched it, and it's because of you that we got that.
it's been great to scare generations of kids over and over again, and to know that adults carry this stuff in their heads to this day. It means a lot. And as I have matured as an artiste, I still maintain that the stuff I did for those shows, Goosebumps especially, is some of the best stuff I've ever done in my career. I thoroughly love doing it, and it's like in your wheelhouse. I love scary stuff, so it's fantastic. So
Scary stuff is always fun.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much for the questions, and thanks for being interested in it, and thanks for talking to me. Thanks for bringing Slappy out.
Yeah.
And good luck with the podcast. Carry on, and if you need anything else, let me know.
Absolutely. And that's going to do it for
appreciate you.
tonight's episode of the Goosebumps Crew Podcast. Thanks to Ron for joining us. And of course, make sure you follow all of my Goosebumps crewmates, Goosebumps Aussie fan, Nick Shawin, and Michael Oaklist, the ultimate Goosebumps man, on their social medias. And of course, follow us here at the Goosebumps channel if you want to keep up with future episodes of the Goosebumps Crew Podcast and future Goosebumps episodes. Make sure you tune in next week. We'll have another fun Goosebumps Crew episode for you guys. But until then, this has been the Goosebumps Crew Podcast, and we want to wish you all to stay safe, take care, and have a very scary day.